In this video, we will add a unit test target to a project that didn't have unit tests to begin with. And then we are going to mock our network request so that our unit test will be getting data from a local JSON file as opposed to going to the network, going to the internet, and getting data. This will isolate our unit test to only test our personal code as opposed to testing the internet. Hello, my name is Michaela Karen. I am a full-time iOS developer and freelancer. Let's get started with unit testing. The first thing we want to do is download the project that we're going to be unit testing. So open terminal. So you can hit Command space and then in Spotlight start typing terminal and it'll open, or just, use the Spotlight search, which will give you the same thing, or if you really want to open it via Finder. So first thing we are going to do is go to our desktop. So we want to type CD and then desktop, and this autocomplete is part of one of the things that I have added onto my terminal. So we do CD desktop and then hit enter, and then yours will probably say like Michaela Karen MacBook Pro, or whatever your name is, and then it'll say desktop, so that's how you know you're on your desktop. And if you type ls and hit enter, I have a bunch of screenshots and a folder called testing, but you should see whatever files are like sitting on your desktop, and that's how you know you are in the right spot. Then I hit Command K, and that's how you clear the terminal. And what we want to do is clone this project. So the URL will be in the description, or you can search it on GitHub with CodeWithChris and then YT Vapor iOS app. So we are going to be unit testing the iOS app that I created during the Vapor series. So if you want to see how this app is built, go ahead and check out that series. That'll be in the link in the description. So we want to clone this. So to do that, click the drop down for code and select one of these. You have to select the right one, so typically almost everybody will use this HTTPS and you just copy that. But to do that and actually use it, you have to set up your personal access token with GitHub for it to all kind of work. If you don't want to do that, you can use SSH, which again, you can see you have to set up a public SSH key, which I haven't done. But the one I personally use is GitHub CLI, which this is just if you click on this Learn More button. It allows you to use GitHub from the command line, and I think that's super cool. So I use this one, and my GitHub in terminal, on my computer, is authenticated through that as opposed to HTTPS. So pick whichever one you want and which one works. If you don't know, I would say they're both kind of easy. I would say pick HTTPS. The GitHub CLI is actually not too bad. It takes you through how to use everything. This is kind of off topic real quick, but if you download the command line tool right here, it literally tells you how to authenticate, which is not too bad. But that's the one I'm going to use, so we will copy this, and then all I have to do is paste that. If you did use one of the other two, you'll see it's just a URL. So you need to type git clone and then paste this, because if you just paste that into the terminal, it won't work. You would have to do git clone and then paste that. So it would be like this, but I'm going to use the GitHub CLI version. So I just type exactly what was in there for mine because it has the GH repo clone, and hit enter, and then you can see it cloned it to our computer, but we're still in the desktop directory. So we type ls and hit enter, and then you can see the project is YT Vapor iOS apps. So we want to change directory into that one. YT, hit enter, and see, this is why I have this plugin thing on my terminal, because it auto completes for me, and I think that's super cool. So if you want to use the same what is it called, plugin thing that I use on mine, it's called Fig. It's called fig.io, so you can download that if you want to. Okay, so now that we have downloaded it, you can see that we're in lesson 3 because there's multiple different lessons. That's how I split up the project. Is lesson 3 goes into building part of the app, lesson 4 I don't think we even do anything, and then lesson 5 is where we finish the rest of the app. So we want to check out the lesson 5 branch because that's the one that has the finished code in it. So to do that, we can type git checkout, and then we want to check out lesson 5. And then you can see it says branch lesson 5 set up to track remote branch from origin, and then we switch to lesson 5. So the first part just means we're tracking the lesson 5 branch like in GitHub, and then it's called origin, that's the name of the remote, and then we switch to it, which is what we want. And you can see it in my terminal because of the plugin stuff that I have, but also if you type git branch and hit enter, you should see we have lesson 3 and then 5, and we know we're on lesson 5 because that's where the little star is. Okay, we have cloned the project, but we need to open it. So we could type open space and then a period, and this will open it in Finder for us, like at this directory that we're in, and then we just double click on this. Or you can type open and start typing the Xcode project. So it says open YT Vapor iOS app.xcode project. When you do this and hit enter, it automatically opens the project for us. Now that we've opened the project, let's see what it looks like. So we are not going to use my iPhone, we're going to use the simulator. I like the iPhone 13, even though I don't have it, as you can tell right there. So let's run the project. So if we click Command R, we have run the project, and this is what we see. It is just your basic CRUD application, meaning create, read, update, delete. So all it can do is fetch a list of songs. So here's a list of songs that I've been listening to lately. If we click the plus button here, because this was very minimal, there's literally like no title or anything telling you what to do, but all you do is type in a song name. So let's type in Stay is another one of their songs. If you click add a song, we see that we added the song to the list. And then we can click on the song and modify it. So that's the update. So update song. Okay, rearrange, that's okay. We do that, and then we can also delete. So let's like kill this love, delete, and that's about it. That's all the app does, is those 4 different things. But now we want to unit test it. So this project was not written with unit tests, so we want to go and add them manually. So we can do that in a couple of ways. We can go up to File and click Add. I think, is it Add? Oh yeah, I couldn't remember. Okay, we click File and then hover over New, and then go down to Add Target. So we click on that, and then this big list of things come up of pretty much a bunch of different stuff you can do in iOS. So make sure you have iOS selected, and let's filter this and type unit. And what we want to add is a unit testing bundle. So if we click on next, we can do it this way. Another way to add unit test is to go over to the 6th little icon here. If you hover over it, it says this the test navigator. So under here, you can click the plus button in the bottom left, and then just directly go to new unit test target, which this would be the easiest way. So if we would have clicked next on that other screen, this is where we would have ended up at. So this is our project name, which it has a lot of hyphens in it, and then it just tacks on tests at the end. So that is fine with me, or you can just call it like unit tests, but I would just keep the default name, it's easier. We are under my team organization identifier, we are writing Swift, then that's the project that we're in, and then the target we are testing. So target to be tested is this project. So go ahead and click finish. And then you'll see 2 things appear right here, but let's go back to the project navigator. In the project navigator, we can see a new folder called YT Vapor iOS tests. And you can see these are both at the same level, but they're separate from each other now, even though they're in the same Xcode project. So that's the name that we gave our tests, which was that really long name. And then by default, it creates a unit test class for us, like we saw last time. So let's just keep this one. I do want to delete the test performance example. We can leave those ones. And then over in the test navigator that we saw, this is the class name that we have right here. So if we were to change this, it would change right there, which we're gonna change it. And then test example, this is our one unit test that we have. So if we want to run our unit tests, we click Command U, and that'll go ahead and run everything. And you can see the project ran really quickly, so it opens. But then over here, our unit tests pass because we're not doing anything. So the first thing we're going to do, we are going to be testing our view model. So we can open all of these, most of them. Actually, we don't need the views. We are going to test the song list view model and test fetching songs. So this will go and perform a network request using async await. So if we click on fetch and see what this does, we can see right here that it uses URL session to perform a network request. We make sure that we get a 200 back. We decode the data into some kind of JSON object, and you can see this is generic. I was going to say pretty generic, but it is generic. And then we return some kind of object. But in the song list view model, you can see what we're actually decoding is of type song. And then we set it to songs. The song response is equal to our variable songs, which is used in the song list, which this won't show anything, I don't think. So this is just the view, but you know, right here there is a list, but it's a network request, so you don't see it on the SwiftUI preview. So that's what we're going to be testing. The first thing we have to do though is take out the singleton. We want to make this class so it is not a singleton anymore. So to do that, we can delete this private init because we will have an initializer, and then we can delete this static variable called shared. Okay, once we do that, we will immediately have some issues. So if we click Command B and try to build it, it doesn't build. And then if we switch over to the issue navigator, so you can click Command 5, like Command 1 is the first one, Command 5, yeah, it just goes through. Command 2, 3, 4, da, da, da. But here, we can see in our song list view model, it says no member shared. That's because we just deleted this variable called shared. So now we have to find a different way to access this function. So to access this variable, what we are going to do is actually create an initializer. And we are going to take in an object of HTTP client. And so we need a variable for this. Let's say var HTTP client is of type HTTP client. Oops, exclamation point. And then inside the initializer, set the value. So self.http client. So we're setting this one equal to this one. And so when we are here, instead of calling .shared, the variable we just deleted, we want to use this object, HTTP client, and then we'll call fetch. So if we build this, we still have 3 errors, but that's okay. So let's fix this one down here for this is the delete function. Use HTTP client. And now we have 4 errors. We have 4 errors because we are using the song list view model we're using the HTTP client in the song list view model and in the add update song view model. Okay, so we've changed that one. Let's go click the top error. So if we go to the add update song view model, we don't want to use the shared instance anymore. And now here, we also need to use the initializer. And we can initialize it with nothing, or we have 2 initializers here because when we are on the song list, which I'm going to get rid of the preview because we don't really need it, you can see we call the song list the add update song view model with an empty initializer and with a song. So inside the view model, we have 2 initializers, and we want to change it to use our HTTP client, but we need the client in for both of them. So we create our variable HTTP client, and both of them will then take in an HTTP client. And we need to then open that and do the same thing. And we are going to copy that and we will paste it down here. We'll do the same thing and have this also taken one as well. just like that. So it's taking it in two different ways. When it was an empty initializer, now it has this value, and this one where it has a song and the HTTP client. And you can see this blue over here because this project is under source control. So in the project, if we were to type git status, we can see all of the different files that we have edited and the new file that we added as well. But we won't be going into any of this. And even if you try to push to this project, you can't, so it'll be fine. If I did this, it would work because I have the developer access, but you guys, none of you guys can, so it's okay. Okay, what we want to do next is let's build it, and now we have 6 errors. It just keeps growing. This is refactoring. That's what this is actually called, is we are refactoring the application to, we are changing what the code looks like, but not really the functionality of the code. So in the end, it'll end up doing the same thing. So let's go back here. We need to use our HTTP client, and that messes up this indentation. So if you highlight over this and hold Control and then click the letter I, that fixes the indentation. So we have 6 errors. If we build it, okay, we have 5. We are getting closer. And now here, we are missing the argument for the HTTP client in the song list view. So if we click fix, because we added that initializer of needing this client, we now have to initialize one. So we create a new one at this point here. And what are the other errors? Okay, we go back to the song list, so we're actually at the bottom. That was the top of the file for the song list, and we go to the bottom. We have 2 different ones, so if we click insert. So what we are going to do is we are going to copy this one and initialize a new one for each of these. So a better way possibly would to actually make the song list have its own HTTP client and then pass it into here and use the same one for that instance and both of those instances. For this, it kind of doesn't matter, but that may be a better way to do it. But this is the way that I'm going to do it for this example. So if we click Command B and build it, we're almost there. We only have one more error, and this is in the Add Update Song View model, and it's the update song part. So let's take away the shared and do HTTP client, and we build it, and we still have one error. Oh, it's the preview. That's okay. Okay, I still had that in my clipboard, so do HTTP client to fix that one. Now if we build it, we have build succeeded. So if we go and run the application, we can see it run, and the same thing happens, is it still looks the exact same. So we know, personally, we didn't break anything because we can see it still all working. And we can test that by adding a new song. So let's add, I'm trying to think of one of their other songs. They have a song with 4 Ds. I can't pronounce it. Do-do-do-do-do. So we're just going to add a bunch of Ds. And then click Add Song. And we see the song be added to this list, and this was able to properly fetch it, so we know everything still works. Okay, we have built the project. We don't have any errors. So the next thing we actually are going to be doing is we are going to actually mock the HTTP client. So if we want to close all the files, and we're at this one, HTTP client. So we want to mock this one because for it to be a unit test, it cannot go out to the network, because going out into the network to the internet means our app is relying on something else. And what we want to do with, or what we want to accomplish with unit testing is testing our own code. And our code doesn't test the internet. So we need to isolate it away from the internet. So to do that, we want to start by making a protocol called HTTPClientProtocol. So a protocol is like a contract. So what we want is we want our HTTP client to conform to this protocol. And by conforming, that means that it has to follow whatever rules the protocol sets. So right now, if we built it, it conforms because the protocol doesn't have anything in it. But we want it to have all of these functions in our protocol, so we can literally copy like the function signature here and put it up in our protocol. And when we build it, it still conforms because our class is using or does have a function that the protocol says it must have. And the reason we're doing this is so when we mock the client, we will mock this functionality and make sure that it won't go and do this network request. We will have it go and do something else. So we want that one. We want to add the send data function. And scroll down, we want to add the delete function. So copy this one and put it up in our protocol. So there we go. We have these three functions and everything will still work when we click Command B and build it because this does conform to this. But if we were to add like another function called do something and then we build it, we get an error because it says our client, meaning our class, does not conform to the protocol that we specified. Add protocol stubs. If we click fix, this is what happens is it literally says like you must have a function that says do something, otherwise like you don't conform. But we don't need that, so let's just erase that part. Okay, so we did that. But in order to actually use this is we are going to, this is the real HTTP client, and we'll make a mock client, which is a mock class that also conforms to this same protocol. So let's go ahead and do that right now. So let's add a new file. So click on our YT Vapor iOS app tests, and we want to make a Swift file. So click on next, and HTTP client. Let's call it mock HTTP client, like that. And then make sure we are in the tests like folder and the target that's selected is the test, so not our actual app target. And click create. Let's create our class, so let's type final class, or we called it mock HTTP client. And we want it to conform to HTTP client protocol. So I add this final keyword because we're not inheriting from this. Our other stuff probably should have that, but that's okay. I'll just add it right there. And so we get this error saying, cannot find HTTP client protocol in scope. That's because our test target is completely separate from our app target code. So we created this in the app target, so our test target doesn't have access to it. Does our other test doesn't have it either. So what we actually have to do is import our code from the app target. So we do that with @testable import, and we want to import YT Vapor iOS app. So this is just whatever typically your project is named. So if we do that, we can see we have a different error of our mock client doesn't conform to that client protocol, which makes sense because there's nothing here. So if we go ahead and click fix on that, we can see what shows up are the three functions right here that our protocol says your class must conform to, or must have these three functions for it to work. So let's go ahead and click code completion on all of those. And we'll do something with that in a second. And that needs a return. Oh well. So what we actually want to do is what we want to have our code do right here is instead of using the real HTTP client like this, we want to use our mock client when we perform the unit test. So the way that we do that is using what's called dependency injection. So if we copy the name of our protocol, we go to the song list view model, we want to use that type instead. So we are changing the type. Instead of using the HTTP client, we are using its protocol. So this allows us to pass anything that conforms to our protocol. So we know the real HTTP client conforms and our mock one conforms. So when we build this, it's still not going to build because the mock one, or no, it does build. Oh, when you type Command B, that's telling the app target to build. By default, you can change that, but by default, our app target does build. Technically over here, our unit test target would fail. But if we try to run unit tests, if we click Command U, yeah, we then see build failed because we haven't written any code here. But if we click Command B to build the project, you can see build succeeded. But here, we want our protocol to conform. Or we want to use our protocol here as opposed to using the real instance of HTTP client. So we want to do that here, and we also want to do that in the add update view model. So if we switch this from client to HTTP client protocol, switch all three of those, we build it, we are good. Okay, everything's building. We need to make our mock now. So we are going to focus on the fetching. So we aren't going to do anything with these. It looks like I think it should be fine if we don't write anything here, but if we get an error, we may have to write something. But we do have an error on the fetch because the fetch returns an object called t. And you can see as well the protocol stubs. This is what they looked like for the protocol of like t codable blah blah blah. But then over here you can see it just says t, and then at the end they tack on this and encodable decodable. You can write it either way. I like the other way because it's kind of a little bit shorter. And you can do it like that. So it says t is of type codable, so that's why it had the where t is encodable and decodable right here. So I'm just gonna do that to the others because I like it that way instead. There. And what we want to do is we want to mock our HTTP client. So that means instead of here doing the network request, we want to do something else. And the something else that we want to do is we want to load like a canned response of JSON that's in our test target. So let's click Command N on here to create a new file within our test target. And unfortunately, if we search JSON, there's not really there's GeoJSON, but there's not like a JSON file. We just have to search not blank playground. We just have to go down to empty. No, that's a documentation. Here, other. An other empty file. And click next. And we want to make, let's call it song response.json. And we want it again in our test target, and make sure down here in targets, it's our test target here, not our actual app target. And we click create. So what we want to do is add a fake song response. We are going to pretend like we'll give a JSON response back like what it would see from the server. So here we are going to use this one. So this is what the JSON looks like from our server. It's literally just a title and a UID. You could copy this exact one or type something else, but it does have to look like this because if we look at our model, it's of type UID. So it will have to, whatever string this is, it will have to parse to a UID. I don't think would just be able to type like 1, 2, 3. But you can try it and see and let me know. Or I might test that later, but that's what it's going to look like right now. So that's our song response that we have. So now we need to make this function go and get that response. But to do that, we are actually going to add a new type as well. So if we click Command N again, this one will be a Swift file. And let's call this mockable. So again, make sure it's test targets and we're good. So if we click enter or create, we create a new file called mockable. And what we are going to do is make a protocol, and I gotta spell it right, protocol, called mockable, and it'll conform to any object. And what we want it to have is a reference to the bundle, so that'll be var bundle, and this is a get only property. So when you make protocols, you have to say, are they getters, or can you get the value, or can you set the value? So can you read or can you write? You can do both, or you can do not one or the other. You can only have a get, but if you have a set, that means you also have to have a get, if that made sense. And then we'll have a function called load JSON. And again, we'll make it generic, so this can conform to just decodable, because all it's doing is decoding the data. Oops. T. So this means load JSON, and we will load with a file name and then a type, and the type has to be decodable. So now we are going to make an extension to our protocol called mockable. So an extension for protocols, this means that like by default, we're going to make default functionality for these two different things. So when we have some object that conforms to mockable, it can choose to use the default implementation or override it and create its own implementation. So we are going to use the default one. So for this, we need a variable called bundle. And it's of type bundle, and we are going to return for type of self, and actually I don't feel like typing the whole thing out again, so we are going to copy that, paste it, and then actually write something here. So what we are going to do is we are going to decode data from this JSON file. So to do that, we have to get the path. So not get, guard, let path equal bundle.url. We are going to use for resource with extension. So the first one. And this is, oh, sorry, not song response. That's the one that we will be using, but this is generic, so that's file name and then with extension JSON. So this could load any JSON file. So you could really, in the end, copy this and use it in like any project. And then we could have, let's throw a fatal error with a message, which is more descriptive than just like a print statement. And just say failed to load JSON file. But if all of that works, let's go ahead and have a do catch block. And what this is going to do is let data is equal to try, oh, whoa, not that one. That's contents of, that's what I want. So let data equal try data contents of path, and what this is doing is turning that, that just says a byte from data, but it's taking this, making a data object out of it, and then what we want to do is decode that. So let's do let decoded object equal to the JSON decoder dot decode, and we want to decode into of type t.self. So it's an array of objects that are of type T, so for us it'll be song. And then from the data, so that's that variable, so we want to decode this data into that type. And then lastly, we will return the decoded object. And then we have to write something in our catch statement. So for this, I like to put some print statements and use emojis for everything, because I think you can tell what's happening when you have emojis, because like your console will look like something like this, and it's confusing to find where things are. So I use emojis for everything. And again, that was a shortcut thing I have on my computer. If I type a colon and start typing, like the emojis come up, which is nice. Or you can type Control Command Space, and that's the default, whoops, emoji picker thing. And you can also find that from Edit, and then go to emoji symbols. You'll find that under Edit for like any application that has a text field. So we want to do that and use string interpolation and print the error, but we can also throw a fatal error that says failed to decode the JSON. So there we go. We have written mockable, which is a protocol with the bundle and a load JSON function. And what that does by default is returns the bundle for this target, and then it gets some kind of file name that you pass into it. That's some file or JSON file specifically, and we will decode that file using data. We decode it into some kind of object, and then we pass back the decoded object to return from this function. And if that fails, we print it and then actually throw a fatal error. Okay, we have done that part. Now we need to actually use it. So if we go into our mock implementation, when we fetch the data, we want to fetch it from our this whole mockable object, as opposed to its default implementation of using a network request to the network. So this helps us write the unit tests because we're isolating our code. So if we actually not type that, we need to first make this conform to mockable. And so it has mockable, and now we can write return load JSON, not strong, song. And this is of type. And we're actually not going to write song here. We are going to use the T, the generic T. Closure unused. What is all this saying? Oh, this needs to not be that. That needs to be a comma. And we should almost have everything. Oh yeah, and this needs to be t.self. Okay, if we build that, that builds, but that's saying our, what is this? Our app target builds. But if we click Command U, it ran our unit tests, and our unit tests pass because if we go back to them, the only thing there is this test example, and that doesn't do anything. But we know our unit testing code that we have, everything we've written down here, passes. Okay, that was a lot of code, and we haven't even written our unit test yet. So what we did was we added a unit test target to a project that did not have unit tests to begin with. We have fully mocked out our HTTP client so that instead of performing a network request to the internet, we will perform a network request and actually go and get data from a local JSON file. And we will go and get data from a local JSON file, and in doing that, we will isolate the unit test that we're going to be writing. So stay tuned for the next lesson where we actually write our unit test.